I'm here with Jamison West, the author of The Emotional Side of Selling a Business. He's also been an entrepreneur for over 25 years, built Arterian, formerly JWCS, a Microsoft service provider that he grew from one-man shop to a 40-man company, both through organic growth and acquisition of four other IT service companies. He went from co-founder of three SaaS companies, including Teamatics, SmileBack, and TimeZest, and it currently serves as a fractional CEO of SmileBack and chairman of TimeZest. He enjoys his role as a strategic coach and consultant for several U.S. Clients. Welcome, Jameson. Thanks for being on the show today. One of the places we always start is kind of the origin story. How did you get into the world of building companies and acquisitions and mergers, selling them, and what led up to the book? And we're going to talk a lot about the book, but kind of what was the journey that led up to writing a book to help others?
Yeah, it's a long story. I'll try to make short, but I think I knew very very early on in my life that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that meant. What I knew is I wanted to be in business, and I struggled because I didn't have any specific um, talent as it like a trade or anything like that. I just kind of saw my uncle who was in business do his thing. So I went to the University of Washington Foster School of Business, um, and really kind of came out of that saying, what do I enjoy? And I enjoyed technology. I call myself more a geek than a nerd. I couldn't write a line of code if you had a gun to my head, I wouldn't know what to do. But I love technology and I love how it's changing the world. So I began helping others in the business owners figure out how to leverage technology. And this is, websites were just coming out in 1995. And I started to build a business around consulting with business owners, just kind of helping them figure it out. And next thing I knew, I owned an IT services business.
Tell me about that. Let's talk a little bit about the acquisition growth model where you're doing acquired to hire and to grow. And what were the lessons learned inside of that?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Well, I had been working with. I was in Seattle. I had an IT services business. I'm in Las Vegas now, but I was in Seattle during that entire timeline. Stayed after college, and I had been working. I'd met some folks in roughly 2006, and realized there was a real community of people who did this work, and there were friendly competitors, right? And one of them in particular, named Brad, I got good, still to this day, a close friend. We've worked on three other businesses together. So two of my software companies are actually his ideas. Um, so we just over a couple of years developed like a relationship where we were communicating about what we did, how we did it, best practices, people, and ultimately, I was just able to grow a little faster. I had a little bit more of that entrepreneurial. I wouldn't say entrepreneurial because he's definitely that. I had more of an operations management people focus, so I was able to grow and scale a little more quickly. And ultimately, he said, I'm ready to do something else, so I acquired his business. Then my third one, I was still hungry. I was still, so we now we went from 15 to 25 on that one, and I'm like, okay, I want to get to 40 or 50. So I talked to somebody else who was interested in selling, and they had literally just bought they were a 10-person company, had just bought a 5-person company, and then I bought them 30 days later. They hadn't even transitioned. That's my one and a half. They hadn't even transitioned them onto the books or they hadn't pulled them together. So I pulled all 15 of them right into the business as well. So I went from 25 to 40.
So if you're buying those companies and you're integrating those cultures and those prima donnas and these, rock stars, I could see where, you know, it would take a little extra attention to make sure the culture's right, that everybody's on the same vision and the same path. And, you know, um, especially some of those guys where guys like me just let them get away with whatever they did. So long as I give you a task or a project, it gets done. What was the outcome of that? How did you guys get past okay, this thing almost sunk the company?
Well, there was kind of the cultural piece, and then there was also a financial piece that was really difficult. Again, not intentional on the seller's part, but there was some unearned revenue not on the books, which is a very kind of tricky part of the balance sheet that some less mature owners don't understand from a financial perspective. That really, really was painful. We naturally had some attrition of people, a few clients. We kind of got a little smaller. I think we worked our way back to about 30 staff, and we got very, very tight, and just focused for about 18 months on improving our situation. We got quite profitable, and in 2015, yeah, I think it was 2015. We had our most profitable year in 20 years. So we started in '95. So 2015, we had a very, very good year, and then it was right towards the end of that year that I had a couple people reach out that I was close to. I said, you really have created something interesting here. And I was openly speaking about our challenges and just and how we were repairing. People were like, wow, like that's interesting. So we had some inquiries about a potential acquisition. And I was like, wow, it wasn't really what I was driving for that quickly, but I was exhausted. I think I'd mentioned that had been the hardest year of my life. I was exhausted. I'm way more of a visionary CEO. I'm a leader guy, but I'm not an operational manager kind of guy. I was trying to wear both hats. I was tired of it. I was tired of being the guy who might get the call. Even though we'd grown past, I wasn't an engineer anymore, but I was just really exhausted. So what I realized is that I knew all the nuances. I knew my EBITDA and the multiples and the I knew all that stuff. What I didn't know is I wasn't prepared for the emotional side of the next handful of months of my life.
When their gears start to turn, you kind of want to, if you're the acquisition entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur looking to buy a business, you want your name to be first of mind when those gears start turning in that direction. So,
Well, and that's how my first acquisition happened. By that first when I did it with my buddy Brad, it had been conversations. We were sitting down at lunch one day, and I said, I think I've decided to do this. I've decided to, do an acquisition, and he kind of raised his hand and said me first. But I mean, it's because I put it out there.
right. Well, how did that exit go? I mean, what were your lessons learned in that? And then we'll talk about what led up to the book and what are the key points of the book so people can know why they should go grab it. So,
So yeah, what I did is what I did is I like that fable based Patrick Lencioni, Bob Burger, like the I like that fable based type book. So what I decided to do was, and I had been featured in another book as a case study, and the person who'd helped put that together, the editor had helped put that together. Just I thought he did a wonderful job, and I was like, "Here's my cue." I'd been thinking about the book. I'd talked about the book, but it had been a couple of years. COVID had hit, and all these things. So the very beginning of 2021, I met this guy, and I was like, "I think you're the person who can help me," and he agreed to do so. So the fable, the first two thirds of the book, is really that journey from kind of the setup of somebody owning a business for 20 years and kind of gets this somebody mentions something, but it's not my story. It's a fable, and it's pulled from a lot of other experiences, right? There's a couple nuggets in there that kind of came from my own experience, but it really is this fable that, and even though it's an IT services business, that's not important. It could be anybody kind of who's built this business and kind of spent their life building something, and now all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, what next? um, I then interviewed six other folks who'd been through an emotional journey in their sale, and almost everybody I talked to who'd sold, who'd owned the business for a long time, had a story. Like they're like, yeah, there was a moment where it almost fell apart, or where where I felt like I was disingenuous, or there's all these things. My identity was going to go away. What was I going to do afterwards? Because it's not enough money to retire. All these questions.